All right, it is recording. Okay, so I'm just looking at the instructions. Okay. Well, they want us to have a prayer first of all.
Do you want me to say it?
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Dear Heavenly Father, think that we could have such a lovely morning and that we could find a time to meet that works for both of us. And please bless us to have a good, meaningful discussion about the case study. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Okay. What's your vote? Should Madden go for Babies R Us?
So I don't think so.
Okay. I went back and forth on it a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing. I can see both sides, so I'm not like super strict in that opinion. So if you really think that she should, then that'd be fine too. I just, after thinking about it for a while, I don't think she should.
Yeah, okay. That's kind of where I was at first. So when I was looking at the tables last night, like first of all, I made the Excel thing way more complicated than it should have been because I was not scrolling all the way down and I was doing all this math trying to figure out the answers. And I didn't see the answer tab, and so I spent hours on it, hours and hours. Anyway.
Yeah, and I didn't see the answer tab right away either, so I did like all the slides before I saw the answer tab, but most of them were pretty like relatively simple math as long as you knew where the problem sort of thing was.
Yeah, I was just being super blonde. I don't know. But anyway, so the reason that I ended up deciding to go for Babies R Us is because when you look at the cash flow, it goes down, 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 and from like 2014, 2015, like they're negative, and then in 16 it comes back up and it starts spiking back up.
Yeah.
And I know, and the other ones would be like smaller, and when I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't know if she starts out in a bunch of small spots and then somebody else takes the spot in Babies R Us, they're probably going to overpower her.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I thought about that too. But then the hard thing that I considered is like, there's a lot of risks to going with Babies R Us too. If she accepts their launch date, if she doesn't have enough product, if there's any issues at all, they don't have the budget or the time or the people to deal with like any actual issues. They're still on their first prototype. So if the first one has major glitches, it can seriously, like, they could just shut down their company. And so there was just a lot of risks. And so I know there's always going to be risk, but it just seemed like a lot all at once. And so I was a little more concerned. Plus I was kind of thinking, even if she goes with the small places, she'll be successful enough that her company will be worth something. So because they're all entrepreneurs. So I'm thinking, even if it's worth something a little smaller than the huge payout they'd get if they go for it, there's a lot less risk. They're still going to be able to make the company profitable, either by doing that Babies R Us deal later or by selling out to a bigger company whose competition they are. Either way, I think that it would be a little bit safer, but still profitable for them. But it also depends too, and I wrote this in my paper thing too, like, if they wanted to stay with the company long term, then the risk would be worth it, because then they could have a much bigger payout. It's just if they want to keep going with this company or if they want to go on to start other companies. I think it just depends exactly what their preference is and how they're willing to handle the risk.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I know, I don't know, it ended up being a harder decision than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Like I said, I went back and forth on it a lot. Just like, even if they went for Babies R Us and it didn't work out, couldn't they go back to the small stores?
They could try it. The problem with that is if it's a problem with their product, then no one's going to want their product. No one's
Right.
going to want to sell it. No one's going to want to buy it because it's going to be known for difficulties already. And especially when it comes to like with babies, you want it to be accurate.
Yeah.
You want it to be safe.
Yeah, you're
If
right.
if anything happens and a mother says, "Oh, well, it's not completely safe," they're shut down as a company. No
Oh
one will
yeah.
ever want to buy from them again. And so, especially being on their first prototype, I just worry about that. But theoretically, if they just didn't have enough inventory or something, they could go back to the smaller companies. It would just be a little harder to do. I think at
Yeah.
this point, they're looking at one or the other, especially because typically when big companies do stuff like that, they make some form of deal with you, like, we're going to be the exclusive provider for X amount of time, or it's going to be this expensive here and a little more expensive everywhere else, stuff like
Right.
that, to
Mhm.
make it more lucrative for them to carry it too.
Mhm.
So,
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree.
so I don't know. And I mean, going with the deal would be profitable long term. And that's the thing. When we first started, like when I first read the case study, I was like, oh, well, she shouldn't go with this deal. It's too risky. But then I started looking at the projections and the numbers, and I was like, well, it'd be worth it if it worked and all. And so it just
Mhm. I know.
really
I
threw me. I
know.
kept going back and forth, and I was like, well, maybe she should. But it's still a big risk, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's hard. It's hard. Like, remind me. This was the first case study of 4 that I read this week. So didn't they did quite a bit of testing and they took it to some like conventions and stuff, right?
Yes. So they did do individual testing with different parents and stuff. The only problem there is, especially when you're mass producing, there can be issues that there aren't when you're doing small prototypes.
Right. Right.
Um, and also like with mass producing and stuff like that, if something is just a little glitchy, it can cause big problems, even for that one product. I mean, they did very minimal testing with like prototypes and stuff like that, so it was all very carefully looked after.
Mhm.
The way that they're going to have to do it is they're going to have to rush production, and rush through everything else to make that launch date that Babies R Us wants. And I think that that's going to be the hardest part because then they're on a super short time frame. They have to figure everything else out. They're
Yeah.
still on a budget. They have to manufacture it all with that budget in the time frame that Babies R Us has for them. And so I was worried about that too because I mean, they might not make enough units in time. They might accidentally make faulty units and not know until it gets to parents, you know?
Mhm.
It's gonna be easier for things to slip through the cracks because there's not as much time to double check themselves
Okay.
for like
Yeah.
quality and stuff.
Yeah. I see that. It's too bad. Did we have an option of doing a combination, like uh like meeting with Babies R Us and saying we need more time to make sure, but if you'll give us that, then we accept it. But if they don't, then go for the small guys.
So I think we theoretically could. I think it made us choose one or the other for that, but I think especially for our group assignment, we could write a very convincing case of why they should do it that way instead.
Okay.
Because it's still, I think the way they worded the question is which one should they do?
Uh huh.
But at the same time, I think it's perfectly reasonable for us to write about how, we should talk to Babies R Us, see if we can negotiate a deal where they hold the spot for us
Mhm.
for X amount of months so that the product launch is worthwhile for both
Right.
of them. Because they might be able to do that. Some companies are willing to be like, okay, we'll wait, but
Yeah.
only until this date. And so, especially with Babies R Us, they might say, okay, your competitors aren't quite close to ready either, so we'll give you until,
Right.
3 months later or something. So they
Yeah.
at least have a little more time.
Yeah. That's well, and he likes the longer papers now, which is funny because I thought early on he said he wanted things kind of short and concise, but but then he commented he wanted like 1,000 to 1,500 words. So if we did the combination thing, it would be a lot easier to make that.
This is very true, which is always a real bonus. Um, Yeah, so we could do that. We could kind of put, well, this is the benefit of asking for that deal. And then if they say no, go for the smaller companies. Just because going immediately for that deal with Babies R Us that she already has, it puts them on such a short time frame. And I think that was the biggest thing that pushed me towards saying the small companies, is because she doesn't even have the time to formally deal with a lot of the issues. She'd be going straight for like, you just have to make it work. And that's going to be really hard on everyone, especially them. I mean, and getting production and everything else done in time, it's going to be very stressful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if we think we can do the consensus, I think that would be ideal. I think that, and especially, I don't know, I think if they took it to Babies R Us and Babies R Us knew, like they're saying, hey, we want it to be safe for the babies. We don't want you and us to get bad publicity. And they know the competitors aren't ready and stuff. Honestly, I imagine they would work on them. You know, especially if they say, well, if you don't, we're out. You know?
Yeah, I really do think they could negotiate it, especially because if they're only asking for a couple extra months and not like, oh, wait a whole 2 years for us. You know, if they're saying, hey, give us, 4 extra months of time so we can prep in time, or whatever, they should be able to more easily get that done. Whereas if they push it, I'm just too worried about the constraints and the issues that they're going to run into, and they're not going to have the time to deal with it or anything like that. If they have more time frame, then if they come up with problems while they're doing production, they can fix them. Like if they produce, the first couple units and then find out that something's messed up, they can still have time to fix it before they actually launch the product.
Yeah. I think I agree. I mean, in production, when you're very first doing something, you want to test more models than you will down the road, and they should really test if not 100% close to it at first, just to see, okay, how are things going, and then they can evaluate and go from there. Let's see. Do you mind if I move to the next part?
No, that's fine. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Using the Excel model you created before class, answer the following questions individually, then compare your answers as a group. Okay, so if we increase EBIAT over sales and hold everything else equal, time to payback, increase, decreases, remains the same. Let's see, so, and when they have the divide sign, I noticed sometimes that didn't actually mean division. It was per. Did you notice that? Yeah, but if we increase earnings before, what is it? I'm trying to remember. Earnings before something after tax. Earnings before interest after tax. Okay.
Yeah. When you raised that, I believe it was better for short term, but when you raised the sales, it was better for long term.
Okay. So
the NOA, when you raised the NOA.
Okay. So hold everything else equal, come back. So if you hold everything else equal, the time to pay back increases.
If you only change the EBIT, then it becomes more profitable short term. Like you get profits a lot sooner, but at the same time, I think it's a slower growth. Increasing the NOA sales, it takes a little bit longer to make it profitable, but once it is, it spikes up by a lot.
Oh, okay, I see.
So it was kind of like the difference between going with the deal and not going with the deal. With EBIAT, it was kind of like if they went with the smaller companies, they'd become profitable sooner, but it would have a slower increase in growth. With the Babies R Us, they would be profitable right away, but once they were profitable, it would be increased profits because they would have that extra exposure, extra sales, everything. They'd go from being very negative to positive really fast.
Okay, I think that covers that. Okay. All right. Well, I liked how the worksheet tab it told us if our answers were correct. So it
Yeah,
says compare your
that,
prep worksheet tab.
that was kind of a blessing before I found the answer tab, because when I was doing it, I was like, oh, it's right. It got a little check mark. And then I got
Yeah,
to the answer tab and I was like, oh, well, at least I know I was right
well,
anyways.
yeah. Let's see. What question do you still have about the model? It's talking about the prep worksheet tab. I don't have questions about it anymore. Do
Yeah, I
you?
think you get the basis of it. I mean, I'd have to study it a little bit more and I might have a question about it or something, but
Yeah.
I'd have to look at it in detail. And I think at that point, I'd be looking at other things besides just what this case study is about. And I'm sure we'll look over some of them as the semester goes on, anyways. So,
Yeah. Which decision? Oh yeah, which decision helped you make it to December without running out of cash? What did you do?
so mostly what I did actually is I took a pay cut for all of the founding partners,
Okay.
which kind of sucks, but um, it is their company, and so I figured, to help them make that, cutting back their salary would still make it possible.
Okay.
But I didn't want to cut it too much just because I didn't want them to, be completely broke. Um,
How
and
much
then
did
I
you set it by?
and then I also I drew back the amount of production there was. So there was that top number that was like 3 when I started, and I
Yeah.
lowered that.
Mhm.
And then near the end of the year, I deferred on some of the payments just to make it to the end of the year.
Okay.
Um, but I didn't defer on most of the payments early on, because at that point you end up with just the interest. And so it's almost making it less worthwhile. You might as well just pay it right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I did pretty similar to you. I ended up cutting the founding partners. I cut them by 3%, and
Mhm.
then I lowered the production to 1.5, and and then I sold a couple of the accounts receivable
Okay.
because you're not getting the full amount, but at least you're not upsetting your suppliers.
That's
By
true.
timely. So hold on 1 second. Just one sec. All right, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay, let's see. My mom is going to rent the basement from me, but she hasn't quite got everything set up down there. So
Mm.
she was up here and her dogs were barking like crazy. How does the analysis in this model inform your Babies R Us decision after understanding the model better? Who switched? That's actually what made me switch was seeing that you could make decisions to make it profitable. Um,
Yeah.
like that's because I was thinking, I'm like, oh, okay, going with the smaller stuff isn't great. But then I'm like, oh, all we have to do is like we'll lower the production a bit and keep an eye on it, and then we can always sell the accounts receivable and get cash right away. And then and where I only lowered the founders 3%, I was like, okay, because even still, I had cash, it was positive the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. And I thought about that for a little bit, but then I just kept getting stuck on those risks and the time frame. And so I
Yeah,
think if they had more time to prepare for the launch, then I would have been totally fine with it. It was just that short time frame that just kept getting me stuck, because I was like, that's going to be so much work and it's going to be
it
so
would.
hard on them.
It would. It would be
But
really good.
the graphs changed my mind a couple different times.
Yep. Yep. Let's see. Discuss as a group what strategies have we seen that flatten or lengthen the cash flow curve. Specifically, try to draw the cash flow curves for Dr. John's products, rent the runway, drop off. Uh, I'm not gonna draw stuff. Just make a rough guess as to the shapes of these as cash flow curves.
For which the past cases.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but once Sunday hits, I forget everything from the week before.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm like, realistically, I can't remember everything about those cases. I'm gonna have to go back and reread them to remember like enough to even guess the type of curve and stuff because
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, like I said, I'm reading 3 or 4 cases a week. And so
exactly.
I can't remember.
Yeah, and so I remember like a brief amount about the businesses themselves, but I don't
Yeah,
remember enough about the specifics to know what the cash flow looks like, just
exactly.
because I have so many cases for so many different classes.
Yep, I agree. We're just going to skip over that one.
Okay.
Describe to each other what would happen to Dr. John's if they had decided to build an independent company rather than get acquired. Was that this week? Was Dr. John's this week, or was that last week?
I think Dr. John's was last week.
Okay, because I was like, I thought this week was what's the baby one called? I can't even think of it right now. Okay, so
Rest devices. But I think we had two
yeah,
of them last week, which also made it weirder because we had,
uh-huh,
I think, like Rent the Runway and Dr. John's or something like that.
yeah. Okay, so
There were
uh what was the product, Dr. John's?
Oh, so it was a spin brush. Okay, sorry, I looked it up in my past
Okay.
assignment. So it was the spin brush company.
Oh, the
Um,
toothbrush. Toothbrush. That's right. That's right.
in
Yeah.
which case I think that he went. Well, his was kind of similar to this case because he was trying to decide if he should try to sell to one of the larger companies.
Hmm.
Um,
And I
but I
think
think
he was inspired by Crest, right?
mhm. I think that his business plan had him going through smaller companies because as far as I remember, his toothbrush was sold at smaller companies, but it was increasing in popularity. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was at like the big stores yet, but he was in a lot of smaller stores. Um, and so I think it would have been similar to doing the smaller version for this case.
Huh?
For the rest devices. Um, it would have been like, what if they had gone with the smaller companies? I think it would have been kind of similar to Dr. John's, and they would have been acquired by a different company. If Dr. John's was trying to be more sustainable, they would have to probably find some variety in their products and build their whole company
Mm-hmm.
instead of, selling it because they just have the one product.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think cash flow wise, kind of like what you mentioned earlier, if they stayed small, it would be like a steady, not real drastic increase. And then partnering with somebody else. I mean, yeah, you put the name Crest on the toothbrush, and it's gonna spike. So
Exactly. So if they had partnered or sold either way to Crest, it would have been a lot faster growth very quickly.
mhm,
Um, but I think the difference there is they also have a little bit more of the foundation and the financing to do that. Um,
mhm,
and they were looking at selling to Crest, like their whole company, not just selling their product as much. I
right.
think if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was one of the options.
Yeah, so it would have been a little different. If they were just selling that product, it would have been a little harder on them because then they still have to produce enough of the product to have it distributed through Crest. But since Crest isn't like a store necessarily, it's a whole company, it's a little bit different.
Okay, and then same for Rent Runway. And that was the dresses. Let's see.
Yeah.
It started with been able to convince the dress designers to retain ownership of the dresses. What impact would that have been on their cash flow curve? Okay, so I don't know. Well, what's weird about that to me is when you sell a designer dress, you still call it the designer's name, even though it's owned by Rent the Runway.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure what kind of impact that would actually have, to be honest.
Because I think at that point they'd be gaining the revenue from the dress itself, and then they
Mhm.
just use that to buy another dress to rent out. So I feel
Right.
like it would just kind of be normal
Yeah,
for their
pretty.
company because
Yeah,
they're either renting out the dress several more times to get that payback or they're selling the dress to get that payback. So either way, I feel like they'd just be breaking even to what they would normally look like with their cash flow.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
So I think they'd just be slowly increasing because their business was slowly increasing, not necessarily because of any significant change in if people were purchasing or renting.
Hmm. Yep, I agree. What decisions did Drew Houston make in Dropbox that favorably impacted the cash flow curve? Oh my gosh, that was our first week, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. I can never
Rob,
remember what order they went in.
yeah.
Um,
Oh gosh, I don't know.
yeah, I'm
I
looking back at all my old files and stuff.
I've never had a class S this, like, just go this far back on things. Okay. Decisions.
So I think that one thing that they did with Dropbox that was beneficial was that he had a free version, but then he had an updated version where they could pay for more. And so I
That's it.
think that helped because it gave people a chance to try out his product, especially because it was so technology based.
Hmm.
And then he was able to have people upgrade because they liked it.
Hmm.
But
I
that's the best I've got because I'm just kind of rereading my notes from that case.
I think you're right. And the only other I thought of something. Oh, like when people would say things about the technology, they would make it really user friendly.
Hmm.
And I think that was a really good decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are done with that part of the group discussion.
All right.
So that is great. So one thing that I was thinking we might want to do this time is look at our group questions, group assignment, and then I thought we could make little bullet points of what we want to cover in it. Is that
Okay,
okay?
yeah. Yeah, that sounds fine with me.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I created the document, but I didn't really do anything because, especially with it being like, as a group, decide what you would do. I was like, I'm not gonna, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna say what our group's gonna do.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I'll go ahead and stop the broadcast, and then we
Okay.
can keep chatting. Is that okay?
Yeah. Just make sure you remember to submit it.